some science-based psychology on my YouTube channel, and today we will be speaking about science of developing your capabilities and what are some factors that can be influencing one's success and capability, and how you can provide useful feedback for your kids or people around you in order to encourage them to do better, to inspire them, to motivate them, and to support them, and how you can notice and change your own thoughts about your performance or about your capabilities using different strategies such as process-based therapy, acceptance commitment therapy, solution focused brief therapy, and neuroscience. So do you believe that intelligence is fundamentally fixed or that it can be significantly developed? And your answer shapes how you respond to challenges and how you interpret failure, how much effort you invest, and how much you achieve. And I'd like to begin with a simple but interesting question. Do you believe that your intelligence, abilities, and potential are fundamentally fixed or that they can be developed over time? Because the answer to that question quietly shapes almost everything, and how you respond to difficulties, to failure, how much effort you invest, and which strategies you start to use in order to succeed, and whether you avoid challenges or move toward them, and who you become. So many people grow up believing that capability is something you either naturally have or you don't. So when learning feels difficult, then mind quickly creates conclusions like maybe I'm not smart enough, maybe I'm just not good at this, that this shouldn't feel this hard. And neuroscience, psychology, and decades of learning research tell a very interesting story that human brain is not static, that it's adaptive and it changes through experience, repetition, feedback, and challenges. And in other words, growth is not a motivational slogan, it's a biological process. And from solution-focused perspective, even small shifts in thinking can create meaningful change. And the moment the person moves from I can't do this, you can start thinking what are some strategies I can learn, what skills I can learn, and that maybe I'm lacking some strategies that I can learn and develop. Because growth mindset is not about pretending that everything is easy. It's accepting moments when it's difficult, noticing which thoughts you have, which feelings you have at that moment, and learning to move forward despite the challenges, and using these as signs to better understand yourself and your needs. So today we will be exploring about science of neuroplasticity, what is it and how we can make use of it, and how mindset can be affecting performance, and how you can use different strategies to adjust your mindset towards your goals and what you want to achieve, and why efforts are also misunderstood, how language can shape your capability and capability of other people around you, and also some ways to develop resilience, learning, and long-term growth in ourselves and others. And I hope that by the end of this webinar, you will not only understand growth mindset intellectually, but you will begin seeing challenges as evidence not of limitation, but of development in progress. So, according to Carol Dweck and his research in Stanford University, and according to 30 plus years studying implicit theories of intelligence, he found that children who were praised for intelligence choose easier tasks, whereas those children who were praised for effort choose harder ones. In one interaction, the praise shaped their mindset, and the mindset shaped the behavior. So what's the difference between fixed and growth mindset? If a person has a fixed mindset, this means that they believe that intelligence is something that is fixed and stable, and effort is unnecessarily to be talented to succeed, and that failure is threatening, and that it reveals limited ability, and challenges that they might be experiencing on the way are easier people stop trying when they face with challenges. But if a person has a growth mindset, intelligence is believed as something that can be developed, and effort is the mechanism of growth, and failure is seen as an information, and challenges are seen as opportunities. So how mindset can be influencing performance? According to Deck and Blackwell, seventh grade students with growth mindset showed increasing math grades over 2 years, and those who had mixed mindset, they were flat or declining, and starting and same starting ability, and there were divergence from mindset-driven differences in responses to difficulty. So what does actually this means? That those who had a growth mindset were more willing to try, to make efforts, to make mistakes and try again and learn new skills, whereas with people with a fixed mindset, they were less willing to try new things and were less making efforts, since they were believing that intelligence is something that cannot be changed, and so there are these consequences of having different types of mindset. And neuroplasticity, according to many research, it is shown that every time a person learns any new behavior, skills, or learning anything, their brain is changing. And the brain changes structure in response to learning the result of life, not just in childhood. And Michael Merzenit's research found that with deliberate practice, adult brains show measurable structural changes, and this means that anyone can learn at any age and can considerably change their brain structure and intelligence. However, according to effort paradox, people with fixed mindset, they see effort signals inadequacy, and people with growth mindset see that effort is the mechanism of growth, and discomfort is the feeling of the brain building new pathways. And this idea is describing how your interpretation of effort changes your emotional experience of learning. So, for instance, if you have a fixed mindset, you might have thoughts such as, if I were truly smart, that would feel easy. So, anytime when you are facing with difficulties, or it's difficult to learn something, to try something, uh, then this would be something, a factor that might stop you or make you to avoid. But a person with a growth mindset would see it as an opportunity to learn, to develop their skills, and difficulty would be seen as a means for building skills and capability. And effort might feel like evidence of weakness for a person with a fixed mindset, whereas effort feels like evidence of development for a person with a growth mindset. And if struggles would start to threaten identity, for instance, if you think that if I would fail, this might mean something about my identity, a person with a growth mindset would see that struggle is part of the process. And if a person with fixed mindset would start avoiding challenges to protect self-image, or to protect uncomfortable feelings, the person with growth mindset would seek challenges to improve ability, and that's how they differently relate to challenges and effort and difficulties. So effort paradox is that the same experience, whether it's struggling, failing, feeling uncomfortable, might be interpreted in different and opposite ways. And fixed mindset and why efforts feel dangerous. A fixed mindset assumes abilities are mostly permanent, and you either have it or you don't. And smart people don't struggle, but talented people learn quickly. And this eventually has a negative impact on them, because this would decrease their motivation. So when something is hard, their brain starts to interpret it, the difficulty, as maybe I'm not capable, this proves I'm inadequate, and others will see I'm not naturally good, And this would create avoidance, procrastination, anxiety, quitting, early defensiveness. And for instance, maybe a person learning a musical instrument hits difficult chords and thinks, if I were a musician, this wouldn't be so hard. So is this type of thinking is useful for them or not? The effort itself becomes emotionally threatening. And a fixed mindset assumes abilities are mostly permanent. As we said, they think that either you have it or you don't, or smart people don't struggle, and this causes avoidance, procrastination, anxiety, quitting. And a person with a growth mindset would see difficulties as an opportunity for growth, and intelligence can be expanded, and that skills are built, and repetition rewires the brain and helps to succeed better. And mistakes contain information from which can be learned. So now difficulty means that your brain is possible, capable of adapting, changing, learning, and that at the edge of your current ability and is the place where the growth starts to happen. And same piano student, for instance, would start to think that these repetitions are literally how coordination is developed, and that discomfort still exists, but it's interpreted positively. And discomfort is the feeling of the brain that helps to build new pathways and to develop your brain. And this is a simplified way of describing neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to reorganize and strengthen neural connections through practice. When you learn something new, the brain starts to recreate unfamiliar neural circuits, and signals travel inefficiently at first, and performance feels slow and mentally expensive. And with repetition, connections strengthen, pathways become more efficient, and tasks require less conscious effort. And that this feels hard sensation often happens because the brain is detecting errors, updating predictions, and creating stronger patterns. So mental discomfort during learning is often not a sign of failure, it's a sign that adaptation is occurring. And not all challenges, discomfort, uncomfortable feelings mean that it's productive. Of course, there can be confusion without feedback, can stall learning, and there can be exhaustion and burnout impairing growth, and some methods might be ineffective. But in a healthy learning, moderate struggle is usually necessary. And a useful shorthand is a fixed mindset asks, what does this difficulty say about me? Growth mindset asks, what is the difficulty training in me? And this shift changes persistence, confidence, and long-term development. And according to false growth mindset, simply praising effort regardless of strategy, for instance saying you tried hard and that's what matters, ignores the role of learning. And whereas genuine growth mindset might include effort, learning from the feedback, and seeking more effective strategies, so in that manner, forwarding the person towards setting new goals and noticing what's working and noticing what they might develop. And mindset is context specific. Some person can have growth mindset is one of domain and fixed in another. For instance, saying and thinking I'm not just a math person would target the specific domain where fixed mindset operates. And like mindset can be forwarded towards a certain field, or it can be completely related with the world view. And environment also helps to shape mindset. How parents, teachers, and managers give feedback directly shapes mindset. And process praise also. Effort, strategy, learning cultivates growth. Person praise, for instance, saying you are smart cultivates fixed mindset vulnerability. If if I were speaking from an act process-based perspective, I would shift the focus away from installing the correct mindset and toward helping a person relate differently to these experiences, emotions, efforts, and identity. And what's important here is that do they believe that abilities grow? A person, for instance, if they have a fixed mindset, fixed identity, or rigid thoughts about themselves, they would think that if they failed once, it will be difficult for them to succeed, and they are stuck fused with these thoughts. However, noticing that there were different identities at different times during the past might help to notice that there were times when they succeeded, there were times when they performed well, and that uh, sense of identity and self is constantly something that constantly changing. And therefore, noticing these thoughts about your sense of self, about your behaviors, emotions, can considerably impact your behavior. And because many people intellectually believe in growth, yet still collapse emotionally when they fail. And therefore, we look for fusion with self stories, experiential avoidance, psychological flexibility, value based action, and functional analysis of feedback. And there is hidden trap in praise. For instance, when we say you are brilliant, you are gifted, you are naturally talented, we might accidentally cause fusion with the conceptualized self, and as a result, in the future, a person, when they face with difficulties or failure, they might start to think that there is something wrong with them, or this time that they are a failure or they cannot succeed. But whenever you teach your child or people around you that thoughts and feelings are coming and changing, and this doesn't mean that that your identity or sense of self uh, is changing, can help create more psychologically flexible sense of self and the way to process feelings and thoughts. And now effort becomes psychologically dangerous when you think that uh, if your success is linked to the belief, just to the belief. Because if the task becomes difficult, for instance, your nervous system might start to produce anxiety, shame, uncertainty, self-doubt, and the mind says, if this is hard, maybe I'm not who I thought I was. So the person begins organizing behavior around protecting identity rather than expanding life. So it's more about how we see the discomfort and efforts and our sense of self. And we don't aim here to delete or completely eliminate discomfort. Uh, in order to be successful in psychotherapy, we are trying to increase the ability to open up for discomfort, to stay present with it, and continue moving toward values action. And learning is inherently uncomfortable because novelty destabilizes old patterns, and the brain predicts based on prior learning. When prediction fails and distress emerges. So the way that our thinking patterns are influenced by several factors. With first of them is the past history, uh, past learning experiences, and how often you were exposed to failure or challenges and distress, and according to it, all of this might be influencing your thoughts. And this distress is not pathology, it's often the organism updating itself or trying to process the stress. So instead of teaching that don't feel bad when learning, we teach that you can make room for any feelings that show up, and that this means that you are growing, developing, changing, and this is a radically different stance. When a person learns, even if there is a failure, if there are difficulties, they learn to embrace these uncomfortable feelings and to move forward with them. And the goal is not to manufacture confidence, the goal is to support flexibility, awareness, willingness, and adaptive persistence. For instance, imagine that your child is struggling in school. Instead of telling them you are so smart, which can create a fusion with an identity, we can try tell him, I noticed you stayed with the problem even when getting frustrated, tired, exhausted. And notice what this does. It reflects attention to observable behavior. So in order to create this sentence, you need to carefully pay attention to behavioral pattern and to notice resilient strengths that the child is using, and also time feedback to it, not just to the belief that intelligence is something inborn and it will never change. For instance, you try 3 different approaches before solving it, and now the child learns that adaptation matters, efforts matter, experimentation is important, trying new things is important, and that persistence matters, and not just my value depends on effortless success. So in a sense, you would help them to feel heard, understood, when you are reflecting back their efforts. And for instance, saying, I can see that this is difficult, I can see you continue to engage with it even during times that it's difficult, teaches 2 things at the same time: that difficult emotions are allowed and that action can continue anyway, even during challenging times. And this is called psychological flexibility in practice. And process-based therapy focuses heavily on the brain as a predictive machine. So when someone is struggling, instead of implying defensiveness, we can try to frame it differently as your system is updating, and that these challenges means that you are slowly evolving, learning new things, and that confusion often means your brain is trying to reorganize everything. And that these uncomfortable feelings may be a signal that you are building a new pattern, you are learning something new, then that growth is happening. And this would reduce secondary suffering, such as fear about the fear, shame about struggle, panic about uncertainty. And sometimes praise is secretly an attempt to control behavior. Children especially feel this. For instance, they might think good girls always work hard, that you are a smart boy, I'm proud when you succeed. And then your love and care becomes conditional. It might lead to thinking that you are valuable just when you are succeeding, or that you need to work really hard in order to be able to succeed. And this might unconsciously encourage perfectionist features in your child, which might become problematic in the future when, in an unconscious level, this might cause challenges with resting, this might lead to burnout, people pleasing. So in order to be sure whether the feedback is being helpful either for our child or people around us, we can ask these questions. Is this helping the person contact with their meaning, or are we training them to avoid disapproval? And those produce very different nervous systems. And instead of saying you won, we can try asking, what matters to you about this? What kind of person do you want to be while learning and facing these challenges? And this shifts orientation from performance to chosen qualities of actions. For instance, some meaning attached to behavior might be in the form of curiosity, courage, persistence, care, openness. And now, this time, when you start to see it from this lens, now success is not merely being good, but success becomes showing up in alignment with your meaning, even during challenging times. And this would create to build a resilience in your child and to continue even during difficult times. So instead of teaching failure means nothing, we teach that painful thoughts, feelings, and experiences are part of learning, growing, adapting, and becoming stronger. And when a person thinks that maybe I'm not good enough, they learn not to obey the thought automatically. They can notice that my mind is producing the inadequacy story again and still continue practicing, and this is called diffusion. A psychologically flexible styles of feedback often has these 4 parts. First of them, uh, noticing the effort or the behavior or situation, for instance, saying this is really challenging, this is really stressful, and then normalizing and helping the person to understand and become aware of their inner experiences. For instance, frustration makes sense here, exhaustion, I can understand your exhaustion, I can understand your tiredness or anxiety, and uh, and then highlighting, emphasizing workable behavior. For instance, telling you kept experimenting instead of shutting down, and reconnecting to values and direction. And your efforts mean that you keep learning, and this matters. And the aim is here not to create people who always feel confident, who never doubt themselves, or constantly continue moving to what matters. And there are some tools that you can use to develop this growing mindset. First of them, the yet practice. Uh, for instance, when somebody tells you, I can't do this, I can't succeed, you can teach them to add the word yet at the end. And research shows that the single shift can change perceived permanence of limitations and change subsequent efforts. And in solution-focused brief therapy, adding yet changes the problem from something permanent into something that can still be developed, changed, and improved. When you say I can't do this yet, this creates possibility and movement, and this helps the person shift from identity, I'm a bad person, I'm a bad one, to process that I'm still learning this. And this would focus on small progress, exceptions, strengths, and the next steps, and would help the person to inspire what can be done in order to succeed and improve. And instead of arguing with the person, you gently invite them to see what's possible, what's achievable, what would, for instance, getting a little better look like, and when has it gone slightly better before. So it helps the brain to see growth as possible rather than fixed. And after any challenge, asking what did I learn, what strategy would I use differently, what specific capability can I develop, redirects from fixed assessment and asking yourself such as, am I capable, can I do this, to growth assessment, what am I learning? And you can enrich yourself, learning focused debriefing tool by integrating classic solution-focused brief therapy principles, focusing on exceptions, building small next steps, and focusing on strengths instead of deficits, and helping people recognize existing resources and progress. And the second strategy is the learning focused debrief. After any challenge, redirecting attention from self-judgment to learning resources and next steps, and instead of asking, am I capable, asking, what did I learn from this experience, what worked even a little, what did I handle this time better than expected, what strategy would I try to improve next time, what small improvement would I be noticing, and what capability am I developing right now. These are some questions you can ask yourself or the people around you if you want to support them to notice skills, their strengths and resilience, and to build a growth mindset. And noticing, for instance, when you face with challenges that you work through that effective rather than I'm so smart, your preparation really showed rather than you are natural for yourself and for others. And reminding yourself and others about neuroplasticity, that when fixed mindset thoughts arise, say, my brain is building new pathways right now, and discomfort I'm feeling is the physical sensation of neural growth, not positive thinking, is an accurate neuroscience. So your abilities today are not your abilities tomorrow, because everything is changing, brain is evolving, and you always have chances to increase your knowledge, your skills, and perform better. And of course, we are humans. Sometimes we will be dealing and coping better. Some days we would feel more weak. And the question is never whether you can develop. The question is whether you are going yourself to conditions to do so. And you can always redirect your attention towards strengths instead of deficits, noticing exceptions, building small next steps, and helping people recognize existing resources and progress. I hope this session was useful for you. If you have any questions, don't forget to ask your questions in the comments. And if you have any ideas which topics would be useful for you, what are some questions and topics you want to learn, you are always welcome to leave your comments. See you in the next videos and take good care of yourself.